This mix was sent in by Mikey.
If I was born in a different life, saw the world through different eyes, I would still find the words to make you feel beautiful.
Honestly, this sounds really good so far. My only note is that it feels like a little bit of low mid buildup in the vocals. I wish that there was the vocals just they feel a little bit muddy. They feel like they're not really cutting through enough. So I would maybe cut out a little bit of low mids in the vocals and maybe boost a little bit more top end in the vocals so they kind of shine through a little bit more. Maybe even like some specifically like high mids and probably, anywhere from like 1 to like 2.5K, but it could also be above that. It could also be like above like 6K. But honestly, overall, it sounds pretty good so far.
I would follow every lead, every road, every breeze, and hope that every step may take me where I need to go. If I was born in a different year, a different place, far from here, I think I'd still find the words to make you feel beautiful. I'd still remember where you came from, your favorite books, your favorite songs. Every light could be a candle that you lit to bring me home. But life goes on whether I'm here or not.
All right, the vocals here sound much closer to what I wanted them to sound like earlier. There's a lot less low end buildup. They're cutting through a lot more on the top end. If you could find a way to get the vocals earlier on in the song to sound a little bit more like this, not too much, because obviously, during the verse, you clearly want it to sound a little more intimate, a little softer. So like definitely don't overdo it, but I really feel like you just got to clean up a little bit of low end in the vocals and boost a little bit more top end so they cut through a little bit better in the verses.
And I'm long gone. It won't be long. Keep the light on, the door unlocked, and I'll come home. Born in a different life, saw the world through different eyes, I would still find the words to make you feel beautiful. I would right every wrong, leave my troubles where they belong, and I would only do the things that make you feel beautiful.
Yeah, man, overall, really good job. That's pretty much my only note is on those quieter parts that it's just guitar and vocals. Like, just clean up the low end of the vocals a little bit, add a little bit more top end in the vocals so they cut through a little bit better. Other than that, on the whole, like, the big section where I said the vocals already sounded fine, you got, like, maybe a little bit too much sub buildup, like down by like 50 hertz. Not a lot, like it's not super overwhelming, but it could probably be back down just a hair at like 50, 60 hertz. But honestly, dude, overall, pretty solid mix. This mix was sent in by Jared. Dude, okay. So the intro, like obviously you had it filtered and we're like slowly tearing that away for an effect for the intro. But whatever you did in the intro, it made it sound like everything was really, really full. And I felt like that fullness would continue into the rest of the song, but then it kind of didn't. Like when everything actually kicks in, the guitar sounds super, super thin. The drums sound super, super thin. It's like you lost a lot of the low mids in everything after the intro. I'm not sure what happened. You might have had like a low-end synth in the intro or something that was filling things in, and that might not be present in the rest of it. but just like overall at the end of the intro, it just kind of it felt really thin. It felt really lackluster. Also, right at the tail end of the intro, like right before everything actually kicks in, it was getting a little bit harsh because of the way you swept the filters. I would watch out for that a little bit.
So perfect. Have a right to
And now it's really harsh here too. You got way too much top end, especially there's way too much cymbals. Cymbals got to get back down a lot. You should probably also EQ the cymbals so that some of that harshness comes out of it. You probably got a little bit too much high mids in the guitar. It feels like you have a lot going on between like 1 and 5K because you got the guitar there, you got the vocals there, you got a lot of the cymbals there. Like it's just, there's a lot of top end and it's really, really harsh and it feels kind of thin lower down.
strikes your eyes, pierce through my solid concrete guys. You get my blood moving like oceans, 6 feet within the tide. Come sway through all the motion until you are safe right by my side.
Yeah, dude, you got a pretty significant spike up at like 2-3K. You're also lacking a bit in the low end, which again is weird because in the intro it felt really, really full in the low end, but now it feels like we're lacking a bunch below like 100 and 150 hertz. Yeah, dude, it feels really thin. It feels really harsh. You're definitely lacking a lot of low end out of the kick drum, especially. The bass is definitely too low in volume. That's going to fill things in a lot if you bring the bass up. That'll fill in the low end. That'll make the mid-range feel a little bit less thin than it is now. And you have a lot of stuff focused in the high mids. The guitar, the vocals, the cymbals are so focused in the high mids. It's getting really, really harsh because of how much stuff you have crammed into that like 1 to 5K range. The guitar tone is not great. Like I would definitely reamp the guitars if you took a DI. If you didn't take a DI, re-record the guitars because the guitar tone is just kind of ass. And the cymbals for sure are way too loud. Like you got to back those down a lot because that is contributing a lot to how harsh everything actually is here. This mix was sent in by Evan. It's feeling a little harsh. Part of that is probably just the overall volume. It feels like you tried to push the output volume of this way too much. Like if it's already peaking this high in this intro here, like I can see in the waveform, there's a lot more that's going to come in and it's going to get even louder. Like it's probably going to be clipping and distorting to fuck when everything actually kicks in. All right. According to the meter, you're not actually clipping yet, but you have so much focus in that 1 to like 3K range, and you're missing a lot of like the middle of the mid range, so like 4 to like 800 hertz. So that's probably part of why it feels so harsh and loud and painful, because those upper mid frequencies, humans are really, really sensitive to those upper mid frequencies. So if you have like pretty much just that and like maybe a little bit of low end, it's going to sound louder than it's appearing to on the meter. It's going to sound harsh. It's going to sound painful. Dude, this is a really weird fucking song. Like, it's interesting, I'll give you that, but this interlude I feel like is maybe just a little bit too long, But like, it's definitely weird. It's definitely has a vibe to it. But so far, the biggest issue is you've pushed the upper mid so much and you've taken so much out of the mid range that everything feels louder than it's appearing to, and it's a little bit painful. All right, now you just added a lot of sub information, which is balancing things out a little bit. It's making it feel a little bit less harsh because that sub information is like counteracting the painful high mids, but you still have like a massive dip in the mid range. Like if you just brought the mid range back in, this would probably feel a lot better. But realistically, like you probably boosted the high mids and the subs a little bit too much here. No, not a little bit too much, like way too fucking much. Yeah, dude, fill the mid-range back in. Don't boost the upper mid so much. Don't boost the low end so much. It feels like you went a little overboard with EQ in the wrong ways. Like, the upper mids are great for making things cut through. Yes, that's why people will boost in the upper mids a lot. But like when you're boosting everything in the upper mids and everything in the low end and you're cutting a bunch of mid-range out of everything, it's just like the whole frequency spectrum exists for a reason. You're gonna have different instruments that are gonna fill in different parts of it. Now, I'm not saying to like carve out sections for different instruments. Like that can work sometimes, but in general, that's not the best practice. But like, point is, EQ things less. Focus more on getting the balance right. If you get the balance right, then EQing is going to be a lot less work, especially when a lot of this stuff sounds electronic. Like it sounds like you're using synths and drum libraries. Very little of this sounds like you recorded like a real live instrument. So like you should have to EQ that stuff even less. Like most sounds that come out of synths and that come out of libraries are like pretty much ready to use. Like just balance the fucking faders, man. Don't EQ things so much because you've made things way worse just by the way you've EQ'd things. This mix was sent in by Lincoln. All right, the guitar doesn't sound too bad tonally. It feels like it's lacking some saturation, so you're probably going into a cheaper interface. You're probably using like a Focusrite Scarlett or something. Just add a little bit of saturation on that guitar in the box, but the performance definitely needs to be tightened up on that guitar, like quite a bit. Like it's not terrible, but there's definitely some noticeable things that if you just paid a little bit more attention to detail in the performance when you're like choosing which performance to use, this would probably sound better than it does right now. You definitely boosted a little bit too much top end in the guitar. It's getting a little bit harsh in spots. The vocals feel a little bit muddy. You may not need to clean up the low end. Maybe drop them in volume just a hair and then boost a little bit more top end in the vocals so they cut through better. But yeah, I mean, Overall, again, the biggest thing so far is the performance. Like, you definitely could have gotten a better performance on the guitar and the vocals here. And again, they both sound a little bit thin. A little bit of saturation is going to help that. Again, you probably tracked through a pretty cheap interface. So with like really, really clean sounding preamps, you probably didn't use a great microphone. Like, I get it. You're working with what you have, but a little bit of saturation in the box can go a long way to help things sound fuller and just better in general.
Young and capable of showing love to those above. I don't know inclination between one, 'cause I've never had enough.
All right, when the drums and the bass come in, neither the drums nor the bass sound good. The bass for sure did not have new strings on it. It sounds flabby and just awful. The drums, it sounds like you just over-processed them and just processed them poorly in general. You probably could have gotten a better sound out of the drums if you knew how to EQ better, but the EQ you did on the drums definitely doesn't sound good. There's a chance the drums would need to be re-recorded, but actually you might have used samples on that, but like it feels weirdly out of time for having used samples, so I'm going to assume that you actually tracked those drums, but like the drums don't sound great. Yeah, so lots of mud in the drums and the bass. Too much top end in the guitar and in parts of the vocals. It's not present in like the entire vocals, but like especially around 3K is getting pretty painful in both the guitar and the vocal. Like this needs a lot of work.
One in the sea, fully fledged in the flesh, not depressed from the stress of.
Dude, honestly, when it was just the guitar and the vocals, it didn't sound too bad. Again, you had a little bit too much upper mid bite in the guitar. Things were starting to get harsh. The vocals sounded a little bit muddy when, again, it was just the guitar and the vocals. They sounded a little thin. That, again, saturation could help with that. But the biggest thing was the performance. But now that the other instruments have come in, everything together sounds pretty bad. Like the drums and the bass definitely need a lot of work, probably at the recording end. But again, ultimately, the biggest problem here is the performances. Like you did not pay enough attention to detail to the performances. You did not. I don't know if you're playing everything or if this was a group effort, but whoever is playing everything and whoever's running the controls while everything is playing, whoever is engineering this needs to tell the musicians to get better, more or less. Like obviously there's limits to that, but like don't settle for shitty performances. Like you can get away if you have a well-written song and a well-performed song, you can get away with a bad mix. Like that's not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things. But like you need to have a well-written song, you need to have good performances. If you get those two things right, the tones don't matter as much as people think they do. But like for sure, the writing and the performance, again, here the performance is the main problem. I'm not picking apart the writing too much here, but like the performance especially could have been a lot better. If you just did a few more takes, paid a little more attention to detail, like spent a little bit more time editing things to get it to sound better in general, like that would help a lot. But then again, especially the drum and bass tone have issues and we're getting some harshness out of the guitar and the vocals are also muddy. So I know in these videos we're really focused on the mixing process, but the root cause of a lot of the problems we run into here are really based in the recording side of things and not in the mixing side of things. The mix is only ever going to be as good as the source recorded tracks allow them to be. If you get a better source recording, the better your mixes will be every single time. And it's for that reason that I put together my home recording cheat sheet. This is a free guide that helps you get better recordings on your own at home. I just updated it for 2025. I added a bunch of helpful diagrams, I added some bonus tips, and I made some changes to some old tips to update them for where things are now. If you want to check that out, you can find a link to it in the description below, and I really hope it's helpful for you.